The grandfather paradox. This paradox kicks in when someone goes back in time and messes with events in a way that stops them from ever being born. If a time traveler erases their own origin, then how'd they time travel in the first place? Back to the Future plays with this when Marty stops his parents from meeting, which nearly deletes him from reality, symbolized by his family photo fading. It's not a direct ancestor-killing moment, but the tension's the same. Looper twists it by having young Joe try to stop old Joe, who's out to change the future by killing a kid. Old Joe ends up creating the very future he's trying to stop. That tangled loop of actions messing with their own cause is what makes this paradox so wild. The simulation paradox. This one challenges whether anything we experience is real or just programmed to feel real. In The Matrix, humans live inside a digital world created by machines with every sensation, memory, and law of physics artificially generated. The film shows how even questioning reality is part of the simulation. Since all evidence could be simulated, there's no way to prove you're not inside one. The simulation argument expands this idea, suggesting that if advanced civilizations can run perfect simulations, we're probably living in one. And if the simulation is flawless, any test to disprove it would also be part of the code. So reality might just be a convincing illusion, with no way to step outside and check. By the way, if you guys like movie content like this, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks. Anyways, the ship of Theseus. This one questions whether something remains the same if every part of it gets replaced. In Blade Runner 2049, replicants like Kay and Deckard blur the line between real and artificial. Their memories might be implanted, their bodies engineered, but they act with purpose and identity. If everything's been altered, are they still the same beings? WandaVision tackles the paradox directly when two visions debate which one is real. One is built from memory and emotion, the other from the original body but stripped of purpose. They conclude both are the true vision, and neither is. That conversation flips the paradox into a reflection on identity, showing how memory and function matter just as much as physical parts when deciding what something truly is. The bootstrap paradox. This one's all about something existing in a closed time loop with no real beginning. In The Terminator, the tech left behind by the T-800 gets picked up by Cyberdyne and leads to the creation of Skynet, which then builds the Terminators that travel back and drop the tech in the first place. It's a perfect loop where the machines cause their own existence. Then in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry only knows how to cast the Patronus because he saw himself do it in the future. The knowledge exists, but it was never actually learned in a normal way. It's passed back in time from a version of himself who already knew it, leaving no point where it originated. That's the paradox. The win-lose victory. In Whiplash, Andrew Neiman achieves the peak of artistic success in a final, electrifying drum solo that earns the approval of his ruthless mentor, Fletcher. But that moment of triumph is built on relentless abuse, isolation, and emotional damage. Andrew cuts ties with loved ones, pushes his body to extremes, and allows himself to be manipulated in pursuit of greatness. The film frames this not as a clear win, but as a disturbing trade-off, excellence gained at the expense of identity and well-being. The cost of his victory questions whether success is still a win when it leaves you completely hollowed out. Predestination paradox. This one's a classic loop where the future sends someone back to the past only for their actions to cause the very future they came from. In 12 Monkeys, James Cole is sent back to stop a virus outbreak, but everything he does ends up contributing to the chain of events that makes it all happen. His mission is actually part of the outbreak's timeline, not a fix for it. Then, in The Time Traveler's Wife, Henry's jumps through time keep bringing him to Claire, who falls in love with him as a kid because he keeps showing up. Their whole relationship is built on this cycle. He time travels because of their bond, but that bond only exists because he time traveled. There's no outside start, the trigger paradox. In The Dark Knight, the Joker traps two ferries, one with civilians, one with prisoners, in a twisted game. Each boat gets a detonator that supposedly blows up the other. If one side pushes the trigger, they live. If neither does, the Joker threatens to destroy both. The setup forces each group to weigh their own survival against committing mass murder. But doing nothing risks death anyway. This creates the paradox. Taking action guarantees safety, but at the cost of becoming a killer, while inaction clings to morality but invites destruction. The dilemma exposes how fear and self-preservation clash with ethics, and how doing nothing can be just as consequential as pulling the trigger. The multiple timelines paradox. This one happens when a trip to the past creates a brand new timeline instead of changing the original one. In Avengers Endgame, the Ancient One tells the Hulk that pulling an Infinity Stone out of its place doesn't change their own present, it just branches off a new reality. reality. That's why they have to return the stones, to keep those offshoot timelines stable. When Loki grabs the Tesseract and vanishes, that kicks off an entirely separate path from the main one. Then in X-Men Days of Future Past, Wolverine's mind goes back to 1973 and changes events to stop a bleak future. It doesn't fix the original timeline, it spins off a better one, creating a reset that lets future stories ignore what came before. The villain created hero paradox. In The Dark Knight, the Joker's chaos forces Batman to evolve into something Gotham needs, someone willing to be hated to preserve hope. Joker pushes the system so hard that Batman becomes the answer to it, shaped by the villain's actions. In Unbreakable, Elijah Price causes deadly disasters to prove that superhumans exist. One of those disasters reveals David Dunn's abilities, effectively creating his opposite. Elijah believes heroes and villains are defined by each other, so he builds the hero he's been searching for, not realizing that doing so guarantees his own capture. Both films show how a villain's need for meaning brings their greatest threat into being. The fated death paradox. This paradox shows that dodging death only delays it, not escapes it. In Final Destination, Alex has a vision that saves his friends from a plane crash, but death starts hunting them down in the same order they were meant to die. Each accident is way too specific to be coincidence, making it clear their survival was temporary. The force chasing them doesn't forget. In Donnie Darko, Donnie avoids death when a jet engine crashes into his room, thanks to a warning from a strange figure named Frank. But when time resets, he ends up right back in that room, letting the engine crush him. By restoring the timeline, Donnie fulfills the fate he briefly avoided. Death circles back no matter the detour. The twin paradox. Based on Einstein's relativity, it shows how time slows down for someone moving fast or near strong gravity. In Interstellar, this plays out when the crew lands on a planet orbiting the black hole Gargantua. Because of the intense gravitational pull, every hour they spend there equals about 7 years back on Earth. So while they're down there dealing with the waist-deep water and malfunctioning gear, decades are flying by for the people they left behind. This isn't sci-fi nonsense, it lines up with real physics. Time literally ticks slower in that environment. When they return, they've barely aged, but their friends and families are way older or gone entirely. The observer effect. This one's all about how watching or interacting with something actually changes it. In Primer, two engineers find a way to send themselves backward in time, but every trip adds another version of themselves into the mix. Their knowledge and presence constantly mess with events, making clean timelines impossible. They try to stay hidden, but the interference just builds. In Coherence, a comet causes different realities to overlap, and every time someone walks in or out of the house, it changes which version of reality becomes theirs. The choices and observations made by the characters decide what version of events they live through. The paradox kicks in because their actions don't just react to the world, they shape it just by being involved. Identity paradox. In The Prestige, Robert Angier uses Tesla's machine to make a perfect copy of himself every time he performs. Each version has the same memories, same thoughts, same everything, but one gets killed while the other takes a bow. The twist is, neither knows which one they'll be. That line, not knowing if I'd be the Prestige or the man in the box, makes it clear both copies feel like the real Angier. The problem isn't cloning, it's identity. If two identical versions of a person exist, which one is truly them? And when one dies, did the original die too? The film turns this paradox into a brutal routine, forcing the audience and Angier himself to face the idea that killing a copy might still mean killing yourself. Infinite loop paradox. This one traps characters in repeating events that restart endlessly until something breaks the cycle. In Groundhog Day, Phil Connors wakes up every morning to the same February 2nd, fully aware it keeps happening. The loop resets no matter what he does, and the film never explains why it starts or stops. It finally ends after he changes his behavior and becomes genuinely selfless, but there's no defined rule. In Edge of Tomorrow, Major Cage dies in battle over and over, resetting each time because of alien biology tied to creatures called alphas and the Omega. Every death restarts the day, and he's stuck until he manages to destroy the Omega. Only then does the loop collapse, ending the cycle. Until that point, it's endless repetition. Reverse causality paradox. In Arrival, Louise Banks learns the alien language and starts experiencing time non-linearly, meaning she can recall events from the future as if they've already happened. This shifts cause and effect, letting future information directly influence present actions. At one point, she uses a military general's private phone number and a phrase he tells her in the future to change his mind in the present and prevent a war. The twist is, she only knows this because it already happened in her future. That's reverse causality. future outcomes become the reason past events occur. The film uses this paradox to show how mastering time perception breaks the normal flow of cause leading to effect. The quantum superposition paradox. This paradox says that all possible outcomes of a situation exist at the same time in parallel realities. In Everything Everywhere All at Once, Evelyn Wang taps into different versions of herself across countless universes. She accesses their memories, talents, and experiences instantly, using them to deal with chaos in her own timeline. Instead of one version being real, they all are, existing at once. That's quantum superposition in action. Her identity stretches across realities where she's everything from a chef to a movie star. The film turns this into a literal experience, letting her live in all those possibilities at the same time, not just imagine them. The choice paradox. In Sliding Doors, everything changes based on whether Helen catches a train or misses it. That tiny moment splits her life into two different timelines. In one, she gets home early, discovers her boyfriend cheating, and leaves him, leading to a new relationship and a tragic twist. In the other, she misses the train, stays in the dark about the affair, and her life takes a slower, more painful route that eventually brings different growth. Both versions of her life stem from a blink of an eye decision. The film shows how a small choice can launch two completely different futures, each shaped by one brief moment. Mind-body paradox. In Avatar, Jake Sully's human consciousness is transferred into his Na'vi avatar, permanently leaving behind his original body. This shift raises the core question: if his mind moves but his body doesn't, is he still Jake, or just a replica with his memories? The film treats the avatar not as a clone or simulation, but as a fully embodied self, controlled first by technology and later through a sacred Na'vi ritual. The process assumes mind and body are separable, and that identity can survive such a move intact. But once Jake's human form dies, and he lives on in a different body, the paradox emerges. Does continuity of consciousness alone define who he is, or did that change the moment his mind left its original physical home? The immortality paradox. In Highlander, immortals stop aging and can't die unless beheaded, gaining this condition after their first death. They battle until only one remains, with the last survivor claiming the prize: mortality and extraordinary mental powers. But the story never explains what happens if none are killed or if the universe itself ends. If an immortal survives all others but the cosmos collapses, what then? The paradox lies in the idea of eternal life in a world that isn't eternal. If existence itself disappears, can someone truly be immortal? The franchise leaves that fate unresolved, making immortality feel less like a gift and more like a question with no end. Infinite regression. In Inception, characters dive through layers of dreams within dreams, each one deeper than the last, with time slowing down at every level. The film shows three main dream layers in a limbo state, but the structure suggests those layers could keep stacking endlessly. The deeper they go, the less certain they are of what's real, especially when waking up requires synchronized kicks through all layers. Since each dream can contain another, the paradox appears. Without a clear boundary or anchor to waking reality, there's no definitive starting point. If dreams can nest forever, then any reality could just be another layer, making the true origin of consciousness uncertain and possibly unreachable. Observer-dependent reality. In Shutter Island, Teddy believes he's a U.S. Marshal investigating a missing patient, but that entire reality is a delusion. His mind creates the story as a defense against trauma, making everything he sees and understands completely shaped by his fractured mental state. What feels real to him is actually a construct. In Fight Club, the narrator experiences reality through a lens warped by dissociative identity. Tyler Durden isn't a separate person. He's an extension of the narrator's psyche, turning internal conflict into external action. Both films show how perception doesn't just interpret reality, it creates it. When reality depends on the observer, truth becomes nearly impossible to untangle. Eternal youth paradox. In Tuck Everlasting, the Tuck family drinks from a magical spring and stops aging completely, gaining eternal youth. While they never grow old, everyone around them does, forcing them to watch loved ones age and die while they remain frozen in time. This curse means they can't settle down, form deep relationships, or live openly without risking exposure. Their immortality isn't freedom, it's isolation. They're stuck pretending, hiding, and grieving over and over. The paradox isn't just about living forever, it's about what you lose when you do. Staying young means losing the ability to grow with others, making time feel more like a trap than a gift. Morality swap paradox. In Gone Girl, Amy Dunn begins as the apparent victim, vanished, possibly harmed by her unfaithful husband. But as the truth unravels, it's revealed she staged the entire disappearance and framed him for murder. Her actions shift her from wrong spouse to calculating antagonist, flipping the moral narrative. Though her husband cheated, Amy's elaborate deception, manipulation of public opinion, and eventual murder recast her as the true threat. The paradox lies in how the roles reverse. The supposed villain becomes sympathetic, and the victim becomes monstrous. The story forces a reevaluation of guilt, showing how perception can invert morality completely. The villain's victory by defeat. In 7, John Doe crafts a series of murders based on the 7 deadly sins, but his final move relies on being caught. After turning himself in, he leads detectives to a remote location where a box containing the head of Mills's wife awaits. The horror pushes Mills into a blind rage, and by killing Doe, he fulfills the final sin, wrath. This act completes Doe's design exactly as planned. Although the villain dies, he wins by making the hero part of his vision. The very effort to stop him becomes the tool that delivers his twisted masterpiece. The controlled illusion. In The Truman Show, Truman Burbank lives a peaceful, routine life in Sea Haven, unaware that every moment is part of a scripted television show. His friends, family, and even his fears are manufactured to keep him contained. Christoph, the show's creator, controls everything: weather, relationships, even Truman's memories, while insisting that Truman is genuinely happy. The paradox lies in Truman's apparent free will, which is actually an illusion. Though he feels joy, love, and purpose, none of it is real by design. The film questions whether freedom has value if the controlled life feels real and safe, or if breaking free is worth the cost of losing comfort and certainty. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.